The Battle of Maple Grove, a tractor, a tyrant, and a triumph. The air in Maple Grove Estates was thick with the scent of freshly mowed grass and the faint hum of suburban conformity. It was the kind of place where every mailbox matched, every lawn was trimmed to exactly 2 inches, and the most scandalous event was a rogue garden gnome placed an inch too close to the sidewalk. That is, until Walter Hayes rolled into town. Walter, a grizzled rancher in his late 60s, wasn't supposed to stay long. His sprawling Texas ranch had been his home for decades until a fire, a bank dispute, and a particularly ornery bull left it uninhabitable. His daughter, Clara, a single mom in her late 30s with 2 kids and a mortgage, offered him her guest room in Maple Grove, a suburban enclave where the rules were as rigid as the picket fences. Walter, with his weathered Stetson and a voice like gravel, took one look at the vinyl siding and HOA-approved trash cans and muttered, "This place is tighter than a banker's fist." He brought with him his pride and joy, a 1978 John Deere tractor, green as a summer pasture and twice as stubborn. That tractor had plowed through blizzards, hauled injured livestock, and once served as a makeshift stage for a cousin's impromptu wedding. To Walter, it wasn't just a machine, it was a piece of his soul. So when he parked it in Clara's driveway, gleaming under the suburban sun, he didn't expect it to become the spark of a revolution. The trouble started with Evelyn Marsh, the iron-fisted president of the Maple Grove Homeowners Association. Evelyn, a woman in her 50s with a penchant for pastel blazers and laminated everything, ruled the neighborhood like a queen with a clipboard. Her reign was built on fear. Fear of fines, fear of her sharp tongue, and fear of the laminated citations she'd slip into mailboxes like poison pen letters. When she spotted Walter's tractor, she didn't see a piece of history. She saw an affront to her meticulously curated aesthetic. The first citation arrived in a glossy envelope, accusing Walter of violating HOA Code 12B, Non-Standard Vehicle Ordinance. Walter read it, cleaned his glasses with a grease-stained handkerchief, and read it again. "Hogwash," he growled, tossing the letter onto the kitchen table. Clara, ever the peacemaker, begged him to move the tractor to the backyard. "Dad, just avoid the trouble," she said, her voice strained. But Walter's granddaughter, Lily, a sharp-witted 15-year-old, had other ideas. "Grandpa, this is war," she said, her eyes gleaming. "They can't tell you what to do with your tractor." Walter's resolve hardened when Lily told him about the HOA's rule banning kids from playing on the grass after 6 p.m. "Why?" he asked, his bushy eyebrows knitting together. "Because Ms. Marsh says it ruins the vibe," Lily replied, rolling her eyes. Walter leaned back in his chair, sipped his coffee, and said, "Well, that's a load of hogwash." The battle lines were drawn. Evelyn doubled down, issuing citations for everything from Walter's slightly overgrown rosebush to a neighbor's dog barking at dusk. The neighbors, a mix of retirees and young families, stayed silent, their fear of Evelyn's wrath outweighing their annoyance. But Walter wasn't like them. He'd faced down coyotes, bank foreclosures, and a bar fight or two in his youth. Evelyn Marsh was just another storm to weather. The tension simmered until the annual Spring Harmony Gala, Evelyn's crowning event, where she handed out awards for Best Neutral Paint Scheme and Most Compliant Landscaping. Walter saw his chance. The night before, he polished the tractor's headlights, tied a blue ribbon to the grill, and packed a basket of his homemade venison jerky. He ironed his old tuxedo shirt, but couldn't find his dress pants, so he settled for a pair of faded cargo shorts. "If you're going to make a statement," he told Lily, "might as well make it loud." The gala was held under a white tent, the stage adorned with tulips and HOA banners. Evelyn, in a mint green blazer, was midway through her speech about community standards when the rumble began. Heads turned as Walter's tractor roared down the street, flattening a row of petunias and a welcome mat as it climbed onto the stage. The crowd froze. Evelyn's jaw dropped. Walter, in his mismatched outfit, leaned into the microphone and said, "Y'all took my parking spot, so I found a new one." Someone gasped. Someone clapped. Evelyn fainted into a tray of mini quiches. The tractor idled like it owned the stage, and Walter waved a piece of jerky like a flag of victory. By morning, the story was everywhere. The community newsletter, the town's Reddit page, even a local TV segment. Headlines screamed, "Tractor Man crashes HOA gala," and "Rebel Rancher defies suburban rules." Walter sipped his coffee on Clara's porch, the tractor still parked on the stage, and whispered, "Let the games begin." The neighborhood was split. Half found it hilarious. The other half clutched their pearls. Evelyn, recovering from her quiche-induced swoon, called an emergency HOA meeting, her voice dripping with venom. Only a handful showed up. The rest hid behind internet issues on Zoom. She slammed her gavel, declaring Walter's stunt a violation of 22 HOA clauses, from excessive noise to non-approved decor. Her treasurer, Mildred, suggested asking Walter to move the tractor politely. Evelyn's glare could have melted steel. Politely, she hissed. "He drove over my tulips." That afternoon, Evelyn marched to Clara's house, heels clicking like gunfire, and handed Walter a $500 fine for unauthorized use of community property. Walter opened the envelope, whistled, and said, "Fancier than my last divorce decree." His grandson, Ben, 12 and quick with a smirk, snorted. Evelyn's lips thinned. "Payment in 10 days, she snapped. "And that tractor better be gone by tomorrow, or I'm calling my lawyer." Walter climbed onto the tractor, started the engine, and let it purr. Evelyn flinched. He cut the ignition and looked her in the eye. "Ma'am, I fought off a bobcat with a tire iron to keep this thing running. I ain't moving it because you don't like my style." Evelyn stormed off, muttering about bylaws. Walter turned to Ben. "Boy, fetch me a lawn gnome and some tinsel. If they want a show, we'll give them one." The morning after Walter's stage-stealing stunt, Maple Grove Estates was a powder keg. Neighbors whispered over picket fences, some chuckling about the tractor still parked defiantly on the HOA's pristine platform, others clenching their jaws at the audacity. Evelyn Marsh, her composure barely stitched together, was already plotting her counterattack. Walter, meanwhile, sat on Clara's porch, sipping sweet tea and watching sparrows perch on his John Deere like it was a monument. For him, this wasn't just about a tractor, it was about principle, about standing up to a bully in a blazer. Evelyn's next move came swiftly. She issued a new fine, this one for $750, citing damage to landscaping and public disruption. The citation, laminated as always, was taped to Clara's mailbox like a declaration of war. Walter read it, snorted, and paid the fine in nickels, delivering the coins in a rusty coffee can to Evelyn's doorstep. Her face, when she opened the door, was a study in restrained fury. "This is childish," she spat. Walter tipped his Stetson. "Matches your rulebook, ma'am." Clara, caught in the crossfire, pleaded with her father to de-escalate. "Dad, we can't afford a legal fight," she said, rubbing her temples. "Just move it to the garage." But Walter was unmoved. "I ain't hiding from a woman who organizes her socks by shade," he said. His grandkids, Lily and Ben, were all in. Lily, with her knack for social media, posted a TikTok of Walter taping an HOA VIP parking sign to the tractor's hood. It racked up thousands of views, with comments like "Tractor Grandpa is my hero" and "HOA tyrants deserve this." Ben, meanwhile, suggested adding a disco ball to the tractor's grill. Walter laughed, but vetoed it. "Let's not overdo the sparkles, son." Evelyn, undeterred, upped the ante. She hired a tow truck to remove the tractor under the cover of night. The driver, a wiry man with a faded baseball cap, crept into Maple Grove at 2 a.m., lights off, hooking what he thought was Walter's John Deere. But Walter, ever the strategist, had anticipated this. He'd parked a Decoyen old lawnmower spray-painted green in the driveway. The tow truck hauled it away, leaving the real tractor safe in Clara's garage. By noon, Evelyn's triumphant post on the HOA bulletin board read, "The illegal vehicle has been removed. Order is restored." Walter waited an hour, then rolled out the John Deere, now sporting a fresh coat of forest green paint and a decal that read, "Evelyn's Nightmare." The neighborhood erupted in laughter. Someone started grilling burgers. Evelyn locked herself in her house for the rest of the day. The stunt turned Walter into a local legend. A small-town blog ran a piece titled "Tractor Man vs. HOA Queen," and Walter taped a copy to his garage door. Neighbors who'd once tiptoed around Evelyn began testing the waters. Mr. Thompson, a retired mechanic, parked his fishing boat diagonally across his driveway, daring Evelyn to complain. Mrs. Carter, fined years ago for planting sunflowers instead of roses, placed a ceramic pig by her mailbox with a sign. Walter was right. The HOA's grip was slipping, and Evelyn knew it. Her response was to double down. She filed a legal motion, threatening to sue Walter for continued violations. The letter, delivered by her lawyer, Leonard Price, a man who specialized in petty disputes, demanded the tractor's removal within 48 hours. Walter read it over pancakes, scribbled, "Ain't moving," on a Polaroid of the tractor, and mailed it back. He also contacted a local reporter who ran a follow-up story that painted Evelyn as a suburban dictator. The article went viral in the county, and Maple Grove became a battleground for a larger debate: individual freedom versus collective control. Walter didn't stop there. He turned Clara's front lawn into a pop-up rancher's market, selling eggs, jerky, and honey from his cousin's beehives. A sign read, "Support local grit. Defy local nonsense." The mayor's wife stopped by, bought a jar of honey, and shook Walter's hand. Evelyn countered with a temporary fence around the HOA stage, hoping to block Walter's access. Walter responded by hanging a free tractor rides sign and giving kids joyrides around the cul-de-sac. The sight of children laughing as they bounced on the John Deere's seat was too much for Evelyn. She called another tow truck. This time, the tow was court-ordered, signed by a judge who likely thought he was clearing a farm vehicle from a highway. The truck rolled in at dawn, its driver a burly man with a Bluetooth headset, unfazed by the crowd of neighbors gathered with coffee mugs and curious stares. Walter stood by the tractor, now adorned with signs like "Respect the Ride" and "This Ain't Over," chewing a toothpick. The driver approached. "I got orders to take this," he said. Walter squinted. "You got a name, son?" The driver shrugged. "Doesn't matter." Walter nodded. "Won't be here long enough to need one." The driver hooked the tractor and began winching it up. Halfway up the ramp, the cable snapped with a metallic twang, sending sparks flying. The tractor rolled back, tires thudding onto the driveway. The crowd gasped, then cheered. Walter raised an eyebrow. "She doesn't like strangers," he said. The driver, flustered, called for backup, then gave up and drove off, muttering about low pay. The neighbors broke into applause. Mrs. Carter handed out blueberry muffins. Lily live-streamed the whole thing, and the video hit 10,000 views by lunch. Evelyn, humiliated, retreated to a stress management seminar, but returned with a new plan. She announced an HOA-sponsored town hall to restore unity. She rented the community stage, yes, the same one Walter had commandeered, and designed a banner: "Harmony, order, progress." Walter got wind of it from Lily, who'd found a flyer in their mailbox. He didn't say much, just polished the tractor and told Clara, "Reckon I'll park nearby. Keep things honest." The town hall was packed, not with Evelyn's supporters, but with curious residents and a few of Walter's newfound allies. Evelyn took the stage, her smile as stiff as her blazer, and launched into a speech about leadership and sacrifice. She called Walter's actions neighborhood terrorism, earning uneasy coughs from the crowd. Then she unveiled her trump card: a revised HOA code with a farm vehicle ban, retroactively enforceable with double fines. The room went quiet. Walter stood, holding a manila folder, and walked to the mic uninvited. Evelyn froze, but didn't stop him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Walter said, his voice steady, "I know y'all want harmony, but I don't think it's right to be called a menace by someone who's been spending your money on her own house." He opened the folder and read from a document Lily had dug up: an HOA budget item for aesthetic enhancement, $2,800, spent on custom shutters for Evelyn's home. He held up a photo of her house, the only one in Maple Grove with those shutters. "Mighty funny coincidence," he said. The crowd buzzed. Someone shouted, "What else did she spend on?" Evelyn grabbed the mic, stammering about context, but the damage was done. The residents, once cowed, found their voices. "Vote her out," they chanted. Evelyn's allies slipped out the back. By night's end, an emergency vote was called. Not a single person backed Evelyn. Even her husband abstained. She left the meeting in silence, her visor askew, her reign in tatters. The dust settled slowly in Maple Grove Estates after Evelyn Marsh's fall from grace. The neighborhood felt like it had exhaled for the first time in years. Lawns grew a tad shaggier, kids played past dusk without fear of a laminated citation, and the community bulletin board no longer read like a list of felonies. Walter Hayes, now a folk hero, sat on Clara's porch, his John Deere tractor parked beside him like a loyal hound. The victory was sweet, but Walter knew better than to think the war was over. Evelyn wasn't the type to slink away quietly. The morning after the vote, neighbors gathered around the tractor, kids climbing its tires like a jungle gym, parents swapping stories of Evelyn's reign of terror. Lily, Walter's granddaughter, beamed with pride, her phone buzzing with notifications from her latest TikTok. HOA tyrant dethroned by tractor grandpa. Ben, her younger brother, suggested painting the tractor red, white, and blue for the 4th of July. Walter chuckled. Let's not get too patriotic, son. Green's her color. Clara, though relieved, was wary. Dad, you've won, she said, pouring him coffee. Don't poke the bear. But Walter wasn't poking, was preparing. He'd seen the twitch in Evelyn's curtains when he walked by her house, the way she lingered near the mailboxes, her eyes sharp as ever. She was down, not out. And Walter, who'd once outsmarted a rattlesnake with a broom and a bucket, wasn't about to let his guard down. Evelyn's next move came subtly. She formed a private committee called the Maple Grove Beautification League, a group focused on restoring moral and aesthetic standards. Its members were her old loyalist retirees with too much time and a grudge against change. They met weekly at her house, their voices drifting through her open windows like the hum of a wasp nest. Walter found one of their flyers under his windshield wiper, printed on cardstock that smelled faintly of lavender. He read it, shook his head, and tossed it into the compost. Let him buzz, he told Lily. They'll tire themselves out. But Evelyn wasn't buzzing aimlessly. She'd hired a PR consultant to rebuild her image, and whispers spread that she was digging into public records for dirt on Walter. What she didn't know was that Lily, tech-savvy and fiercely protective, was playing the same game. After overhearing Evelyn's veiled threats during a tense, courtesy visit, Lily dove into the HOA's online archives, old newsletters, and even county property records. One night, over meatloaf and mashed potatoes, she dropped a bombshell. Evelyn used HOA funds to remodel her house, she said casually, like she was commenting on the weather. 3 years ago, she called it community improvement, but it was fancy shutters for her place. Clara dropped her fork. Ben asked if he could turn it into a meme. Walter leaned back, scratched his chin, and said, well, I'll be a shaved jackrabbit. That's something. The next day, he visited the town archives, returning with a folder of financial reports signed by Evelyn herself. There it was, $2,800 for aesthetic continuity, funneled into custom shutters for her home. Walter didn't broadcast it. He waited, like a hunter in a blind. Meanwhile, the neighborhood was transforming. With Evelyn gone, the HOA board was gutted, and residents clamored for new leadership. A few suggested that Walter run for president. He laughed it off at first, but by the 4th nudge, he stopped chuckling. Clara found a registration form on the kitchen counter, tucked under a coffee mug. You serious? She asked. Walter shrugged. Common sense needs a seat at the table. Lily went wild, designing campaign posters with slogans like No More Clipboard Queens and Walter for Freedom. Walter tried to rein her in, but her enthusiasm was a runaway train. The campaign was less a campaign and more a conversation. Walter didn't make speeches or promises. He just talked to folks over fences, at the grocery store, on dog walks. When asked what he'd change, he said, fewer rules, more breathing room. Let people live without a fine for every sneeze. It resonated. Residents were tired of being policed for leaving a bike in the driveway or painting their door a shade too bold. Walter was the antidote to years of Evelyn's micromanaging. When the votes were counted, Walter won in a landslide. His only opponent, a confused retiree named Harold who thought he was signing up for a book club, got 3 votes due from his wife and 1 by accident. Walter took the win with his usual calm, showing up to the first board meeting in jeans and a flannel shirt. His agenda was simple: undo Evelyn's damage. He slashed rules on lawn decor, paint colors, and kids' playtime. He introduced a neighbor-first policy, urging mediation over fines. The neighborhood began to feel alive again, with potlucks, gardening clubs, and spontaneous block parties. But Evelyn wasn't idle. Her beautification league gained a few more members, and she planned to come back. She scheduled a community forum to reclaim Maple Grove's values, renting the same stage Walter had commandeered. The irony wasn't lost on him. On the day of the forum, Evelyn stood at the podium, her pastel blazer crisp, her smile forced. The crowd was skeptical, folding chairs creaking under restless neighbors. Walter parked his tractor just outside the property line, legal, untouchable, and sipped iced tea, watching. Evelyn's speech was a masterclass in spin. She painted herself as a victim of populist chaos, blaming Walter for dividing the community. She proposed reinstating stricter rules, including her farm vehicle ban. The crowd murmured, unconvinced. Then Walter stood, folder in hand, and walked to the mic. Evelyn stiffened but didn't intervene. "Folks," he said, "I'm all for unity. But I don't cotton to being called a troublemaker by someone who used your dues to spruce up her house." He read the budget item aloud, held up the photo of Evelyn's shutters, and let the evidence speak. The crowd exploded. "What else did she spend on?" one neighbor yelled. "We trusted you," another shouted. Evelyn tried to explain, but her words were drowned in the uproar. The chant started softly, then grew. "Vote her out. Vote her out." It wasn't necessary, she was already out, but the message was clear. Evelyn's allies deserted her, and she left the stage, her blazer slightly askew, her dignity in shreds. That night, Walter sat with Clara and the kids, the tractor gleaming under the porch light. Lily, munching cookies, asked, "Think she's done for good?" Walter chuckled. "Folks like her don't quit. But they don't scare us anymore." The stars twinkled above, and for the first time, Maple Grove felt like home, not just a house, but a place where Walter belonged. The peace held for weeks. Under Walter's leadership, the HOA became a tool for connection, not control. Neighbors helped each other fix fences, shared recipes, and even started a tool lending library. Walter stepped down as president after ensuring the new board, led by Arlene Brooks, a no-nonsense retired principal, would keep things fair. Arlene's first act was to frame Walter's farewell note: "Keep your lawns mowed, your neighbors happy, and your tractors gassed up," next to a photo of him and the tractor, both wearing sunglasses from the gala. But Evelyn hadn't vanished. She lurked, her beautification league meeting weekly, plotting in whispers. Walter kept an eye on her, not out of fear, but caution. Then came Lily's idea: a tractor parade to celebrate the neighborhood's new spirit. It wasn't just tractors, lawn mowers, golf carts, kids' wagons, all decorated with streamers and signs. Walter's John Deere would lead. The planning was a community affair, with kids painting banners and Clara baking enough brownies for a small army. Walter polished the tractor, added new tires, and felt a flicker of pride. The night before the parade, trouble struck. Walter found the tractor vandalized, a flat tire, sugar in the gas tank, eggs splattered on the hood. He didn't need proof to know Evelyn was behind it. Instead of raging, he fixed the tire, flushed the tank, and had the tractor running by dawn. He added a new sign, "Still kicking." The parade went off without a hitch, bigger than anyone expected. Local news covered it. The mayor sent a deputy, and the street pulsed with laughter and music. Evelyn watched from her porch, arms crossed, her face a mask of disdain. The tractor parade was Maple Grove Estate's declaration of independence, a riot of color, noise, and unapologetic joy. The morning sun glinted off Walter Hayes' John Deere, its fresh tires rolling proudly at the head of a motley procession, lawnmowers decked with balloons, golf carts draped in streamers, kids pulling wagons painted like pirate ships. Neighbors lined the streets, clapping and waving, their folding chairs creaking under the weight of a community finally free to breathe. Walter, in his Stetson and a clean flannel, waved back, his weathered face creased with a rare smile. For once, Maple Grove wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a celebration. The planning had taken weeks, with Lily spearheading the effort like a general with a glitter pen. She'd rallied kids to make signs, coerced Clara into baking trays of brownies, and even convinced Mr. Thompson to lend his sound system for music. Ben, ever the prankster, had pushed for a manure float, built by his teen friends, a hay-filled wagon with a cheeky sign, "Fertilizing Freedom." Walter had raised an eyebrow, but let it slide. "Just don't get it near my tractor," he'd said. The community poured in, volunteering time, supplies, even a cotton candy machine from the local hardware store. It was the kind of unity Evelyn Marsh had always preached, but never inspired. Evelyn, though, hadn't stayed silent. Her Beautification League had circulated flyers decrying the parade as a mockery of civic order. Most residents tossed them in the trash, but the vandalism of Walter's tractor, sugar in the gas tank, eggs on the hood, a slashed tire had her fingerprints all over it. Walter had no proof, but he didn't need it. He'd spent the pre-dawn hours fixing the damage, his hands steady from years of mending fences and birthing calves. By the time the parade kicked off, the tractor gleamed, its new sign still kicking, drawing cheers from the crowd. Walter drove slowly, kids trailing behind, their laughter louder than the engine's rumble. The parade route wound through Maple Grove's tidy streets, past houses now sporting unapproved flower beds and quirky lawn ornaments. Local news vans parked at the corner, cameras rolling as the mayor's deputy waved awkwardly from a golf cart. The energy was electric, a middle finger to years of Evelyn's laminated tyranny. But Evelyn wasn't watching from the sidelines. She stood on her porch, arms crossed, her pastel blazer a stark contrast to the parade's chaos. Her eyes followed Walter's tractor like a hawk tracking prey. Halfway through the route, she made her move. As the manure float bins pried and joy rounded a corner, Evelyn stepped into the street, her hand raised like a traffic cop. "This is unsafe," she shouted, her voice shrill. The noise, the disruption, it's a disgrace. The crowd hushed, stunned by her audacity. Walter slowed the tractor, his expression unreadable. The float's driver, a lanky teen named Ethan, hesitated, unsure whether to stop. Evelyn pressed forward, ranting about restoring dignity and community standards. Then, in a moment that would live in Maple Grove lore, fate intervened. A banana peel, dropped from a snack booth, lay in Evelyn's path. Her heel caught it, and with a flailing yelp, she slipped backward, landing squarely in the manure float's hand. Who knows what else? The crowd froze. Then laughter erupted, not cruel, but disbelieving, the kind that bubbles up when life scripts a punchline too perfect to plan. Even Walter coughed to hide a chuckle. Evelyn, straw in her hair and dignity in tatters, stood slowly, her blazer streaked with something unidentifiable. She didn't speak. She just walked home, head down, as the parade resumed with renewed vigor. The story spread like wildfire. By evening, Lily's live stream of the incident had 50,000 views, with comments ranging from "Karma's a manure float" to "Evelyn deserved it." The local paper ran a tongue-in-cheek headline: "HOA ex-queen takes a tumble in tractor parade." Evelyn didn't leave her house for 3 days. Neighbors speculated she was licking her wounds or plotting revenge, but for now, Maple Grove belonged to Walter and his tractor. The parade's success cemented Walter's legacy. He wasn't just the guy who'd parked a tractor on a stage, was the man who'd given the neighborhood its spine back. Invitations to barbecues and potlucks piled up on Clara's counter. A teenager asked Walter to sign his skateboard, and though he grumbled, he scrawled his name with a Sharpie. Clara, finally relaxing, admitted, "Dad, you've changed this place." Walter shrugged. Didn't change it. Just reminded folks they're allowed to live. But the victory wasn't total. Evelyn's silence was too heavy, too calculated. Walter noticed her car leaving late at night, her curtains twitching when he mowed the lawn. Lily, ever vigilant, kept digging, uncovering more HOA records that hinted at Evelyn's questionable spending. New patio furniture labeled as community seating, a fountain suspiciously similar to the one in her backyard. Walter filed the evidence away, not out of spite, but because he knew Evelyn wasn't done fighting. The neighborhood, meanwhile, flourished. Arlene Brooks, the new HOA president, enforced Walter's neighbor-first policy with a grandmotherly firmness. She approved a community garden, a kid's bike rack, even a mural on the rec center wall. Residents who'd once hidden their quirks now flaunted them. A flamingo mailbox here, a tie-dye birdhouse there. Walter started a Sunday porch chat tradition, where neighbors dropped by for coffee and no agenda. It was simple, human, the opposite of Evelyn's rulebook. Then came the new neighbors. A moving truck pulled into the house across from Clara's, unloading a young couple, their toddler, and 2 yappy terriers. Walter watched from his porch, curious. After an hour, he crossed the street with a plate of Clara's brownies and introduced himself. "Name's Walter," he said. "Trash pickups Tuesday, and don't plant azaleas near the fence unless you want ants." The couple, Mark and Sarah, laughed, already hearing rumors of the tractor guy. "Is it true you took on the HOA?" Mark asked. Walter grinned. "Believe the tractor part. Rest is just noise." A week later, Mark parked a small horse trailer in their driveway. It was clean, modest, but unmistakably non-HOA approved. Walter leaned forward in his chair, waiting for the fallout. In the old days, Evelyn would have been at their door with a citation before the trailer's hitch cooled. But nothing happened. No fines, no flyers. The trailer sat, a quiet symbol of Maple Grove's new normal. That evening, Evelyn walked her poodle past the house, pausing to stare at the trailer. Walter, on his porch, tensed, expecting a tirade. Instead, Evelyn tilted her head, nodded to herself, and looked at him. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, half to the air, and kept walking. Walter raised his iced tea in a mock toast. "Adapt or bust," he muttered. The moment lingered, a sign that Evelyn might be bending, if not breaking. But Walter wasn't naive. He'd seen her kind before, folks who clung to control like a lifeboat. The Beautification League still met, their lavender-scented flyers popping up in mailboxes. Lily reported seeing Evelyn at the county clerk's office, likely digging for leverage. Walter kept his tractor gassed up, his folder of evidence close, and his eyes on the horizon. As summer faded, Maple Grove settled into a rhythm. The parade had marked a turning point, not just for Walter, but for everyone. The mayor's deputy, over brisket at a block party, said other HOAs were studying Maple Grove's rebellion. Walter didn't care for the spotlight, but he liked the change. Kids rode scooters under porch lights, flags flew from poles without permits, and the air smelled of barbecue smoke, not fear. On his porch, Walter watched the stars, the tractor humming faintly from a recent tune-up. Clara joined him, handing him a coffee. "You happy here, Dad?" she asked. He nodded. Didn't need the ranch. Found something better. The golden light of late summer draped Maple Grove Estates in a warm glow, softening the edges of its once rigid lawns and picket fences. The neighborhood had shed its old skin, trading Evelyn Marsh's laminated rulebook for a looser, livelier vibe. Kids chased fireflies past curfew, garden gnomes multiplied without citations, and the community bulletin board now advertised potlucks instead of penalties. At the heart of it all was Walter Hayes, his John Deere tractor parked proudly beside a birdbath shaped like a cowboy boot. For Walter, Maple Grove wasn't just Clara's address, it was home, hard-won and fiercely loved. But peace, as Walter knew from years on the ranch, was never permanent. Evelyn's Beautification League, though diminished, still buzzed like a hornet's nest in her living room every Thursday night. Her lavender-scented flyers, once ignored, began cropping up with sharper edges, calling for a return to standards and hinting at legal recourse against disruptive elements. Walter didn't flinch. He'd faced worse than a woman with a grudge and a printer. Still, he kept Lily's folder of evidence proof of Evelyn's misused HOA funds tucked in his desk, just in case. Lily, now 16 and bolder than ever, hadn't stopped her sleuthing. She'd found more crumbs, an email thread from Evelyn's tenure, buried in the HOA's digital archives, where she'd bullied a contractor into prioritizing her patio over a community playground repair. This could bury her, Lily said, her eyes gleaming over dinner. Clara, ever cautious, urged restraint. "Let's not stir the pot, honey." But Walter, carving his roast, said, "Sometimes the pot needs stirring. Just gotta do it smart." Smart was Walter's way. He didn't flaunt his victory or gloat about Evelyn's fall. Instead, he poured his energy into the neighborhood. His Sunday porch chats became a staple, drawing neighbors with coffee mugs and stories. He helped Mr. Thompson fix a leaky sprinkler, taught Ben how to change a tractor tire, and even coached Lily on parallel parking, using the John Deere, to Clara's horror. When Arlene Brooks, the new HOA president, proposed a community tool shed, Walter donated half the lumber. "Folks need to build, not just obey," he said. Arlene's leadership cemented Maple Grove's transformation. She was tough but fair, with a knack for defusing drama before it flared. Under her, the HOA became a facilitator, not a dictator. Residents painted their shutters teal, planted wildflowers, and even parked an RV for a week without a fuss. The annual budget meeting, once a tense affair under Evelyn, turned into a barbecue with pie contests and kids' games. Walter attended, not as president, but as a neighbor, his tractor parked nearby as a quiet reminder of what they'd overcome. Evelyn, though, was regrouping. Her Beautification League had grown to a dozen members, mostly retirees nostalgic for her iron grip. She'd shifted tactics, avoiding direct attacks on Walter and focusing on community pride. She proposed a Maple Grove Heritage Day, a formal event with speeches and address Cadino tractors allowed. The flyer, slipped into every mailbox, promised a return to elegance. Most residents rolled their eyes, but a few signed up, drawn by Evelyn's old charisma or fear of her lingering influence. Walter saw through it. "She's fishing for power," he told Clara, folding the flyer into a paper airplane for Ben. "Let her fish. She won't catch much." But Lily wasn't so sure. "She's meeting with a lawyer again," she reported, having spotted Evelyn's car at a downtown firm. "What if she sues the HOA?" Walter sipped his coffee. "Then we'll fight. Same as always." The tension simmered until Heritage Day arrived. Evelyn had rented the community center, decorating it with white tablecloths and a banner. Tradition, order, excellence. The event was stiff, with lukewarm punch and speeches about preserving property values. About 50 residents showed up, mostly Evelyn's allies and curious neutrals. Walter didn't attend, but he parked his tractor across the street, just within view, its still kicking sign gleaming. Lily and Ben, on a mission, live-streamed snippets of the event, catching Evelyn's veiled jabs at recent disruptions. Midway through her keynote, Evelyn made a bold play. She announced a petition to reinstate core HOA standards, including her farm vehicle ban, and claimed she had legal grounds to challenge the current board's authority. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few clapped, but most stayed silent, their loyalty to Walter's vision stronger than Evelyn's rhetoric. Then, as Evelyn called for signatures, the doors swung open. It was Arlene, flanked by Walter and a dozen neighbors, including Mark and Sarah, the new couple with the horse trailer. Arlene held a stack of papers Lily's evidence, plus new findings from a financial audit Walter had quietly requested. "Before anyone signs anything," Arlene said, her voice calm but steely, "you should know Ms. Marsh has some explaining to do." She read aloud, $2,800 for shutters, $1,200 for a community fountain in Evelyn's yard, $900 for patio furniture never seen at the rec center. The room gasped. Evelyn's face drained of color. Walter stepped forward, not to gloat, but to finish it. "Folks," he said, "I don't care about fancy speeches or who runs what. I care about this place being a home, not a prison. You want to sign her petition, that's your right. But ask yourself, who's been honest with you?" He laid the audit on a table and walked out, the neighbors parting like a sea. Evelyn tried to speak, but her words faltered. The petition died unsigned. By night's end, the Beautification League dissolved, its members slipping away in embarrassment. Evelyn didn't fight back. The audit was airtight, and the community's trust in her was gone. She withdrew, her poodle walked shorter, and her curtains were drawn. Rumor had it she'd started a blog about suburban renewal, but it had fewer readers than a phone book. Maple Grove moved on. Arlene's board passed a transparency policy, requiring public audits and resident input. The tool shed opened, the community garden bloomed, and Walter's porch chats grew so popular they needed extra chairs. One crisp fall evening, as leaves skittered across Clara's lawn, Walter sat with his family, the tractor gleaming under a new coat of wax. Lily scrolled through her phone, reading comments on her latest video, "Tractor Grandpa, for President." Ben, munching a brownie, asked, "Grandpa, have you ever missed the ranch?" Walter looked at the street kids on scooters, neighbors laughing, a horse trailer parked without a fuss. "Didn't lose the ranch," he said. "Just traded it for something better." The stars came out, bright against the autumn sky. The tractor's engine, tuned and ready, hummed faintly in the quiet. Maple Grove wasn't perfect, neighbors still bickered, lawns still needed mowing, but it was alive, messy, and real. Walter had fought for that, not with fists or guns, but with stubbornness, truth, and a machine that refused to budge. He leaned back, coffee in hand, and let the night settle around him. The battle was over. The home was won. Months later, a new family moved in down the block, their U-Haul followed by a beat-up pickup towing a go-kart. Walter watched from his porch, a grin tugging at his lips. Clara, catching his look, said, "Don't start another war, Dad." He chuckled. "No war, just welcoming him." He crossed the street with a jar of his venison jerky, introduced himself, and said, "Keep that go-kart gassed up. This place likes a little noise." The neighborhood, twinkling under porch lights, agreed. The story of Walter Hayes and his tractor is more than a suburban showdown. It's a testament to standing up against overreach, to fighting for the right to live freely in your own home. Maple Grove Estates became a beacon of what happens when a community chooses trust over control, courage over compliance. But it also raises questions that linger long after the tractor's engine cools. How far should we go to defend our principles? When does resistance tip into chaos? And what do we owe each other in the messy, human work of living side by side? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Was Walter a hero or a troublemaker? Did Evelyn deserve her fall, or was she a victim of her rigidity? More broadly, how do you see violence, whether physical, like a tractor plowing through petunias, or social, like public shaming playing a role in confronting injustice? Share your stance, your stories, or your debates. Let's keep this conversation rolling, as loud and stubborn as Walter's John Deere.